few questions. If I can stay with you after the class or something, please.
Actually, only Wesley is on right now, so if you have a question, I'd be more than happy to help you with it.
Okay, so I'm a little bit like overwhelmed. Like, what should I do next? I enrolled in UpCity, and they are bombing me with a lot of referrals, etc. So, but I haven't get my SentryLog card yet. So, I mean, what should I do next? I mean, in order to have everything in order when I start meeting people, talking, I have some personal friends, managers that they are looking to buy. So I'm doing the same that I'm doing for myself, giving them information about the FHA, about different mortgages, etc., because they are not pre-qualified.
Okay.
I don't know, like the referral for UpCity, how we handle this. I know it's going to be an introduction phone call from UpCity, but after that, I mean, like today, there was some referral for open houses. Like, okay, can I go up to open house without the sign, without the central card? So I was,
Well, the Sentry Lockbox card is only going to help you if there's a Sentry Lockbox there. If it's an open house, naturally there's going to be an agent in attendance. So all you would do is go there with your business card and the client, or the customer, naturally. As far as UpCity goes, I can put you in touch with an agent that uses UpCity a lot. They can help you a lot more than I can because they've done many transactions with UpCity.
mm-hmm.
There are certain things you have to be aware of, and you can also set your parameters on what type of buyers you want to work with UpCity. In other words, you can set a threshold in terms of income. You can set a threshold in terms of how much they want to spend. Because let's face it, if you're giving back, I think it's a 35% referral fee. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a
Yeah,
lot.
if you're
So
giving back 35% referral fee, plus the split in the office, and then you're working with something that's not very high priced, you're not going to walk away with a lot of money and you're going to spend a lot of time.
Yes, noted.
So like I said, you could set your threshold and you can go from there. So what I want to do is, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of people that seem to want to tune in on a Sunday, so we're going to get a little bit cozy here. And what I wanted to do today is I really wanted to divide what people are looking for. Okay, so I wanted to talk about buyers a little. I wanted to talk about sellers a little. And then I want to talk about how this whole thing has changed since the pandemic. See, because buyers weren't really looking, or the buyers we were talking to rather, weren't really looking for to go out far on Long Island. They were looking to stay closer. They were looking for transportation. They were looking to stay close to their job. And although that has somewhat come back, it hasn't come back completely. There's definitely been a shift in how buyers are looking at properties, so on and so forth. And areas that weren't popular are now popular now, such as Suffolk. That's a great example. Not a lot of people were going out to Suffolk from Queens. They were going to Nassau County, but they really weren't going to Suffolk County in droves. Now you have a lot of people wanting to move out to Suffolk County. Although it's taken a little bit of a step back, the market is still very robust over there. So what I want to talk about is there's actually a difference between the age of buyer and what the buyer is actually looking for. So for example, from people 28 and younger, they want to understand the process. From 29 to 38, 72% want to understand the process. The older the people get, the less the process is what they are looking for. In other words, knowing the buyer process is very good and how to go from A to Z is great, but because they're not interested, certain age groups aren't interested in that. It doesn't mean you hold off from it. It just means that's not where their greatest concern is. However, when you get a little bit older in the demographic, between the ages of 39 to the ages of 73, they want you to point out unnoticed features and faults of the property when you show it to them. It doesn't necessarily have to be a deal killer. They just want to know that you know. So that's why being a little bit knowledgeable of the properties that you're showing is definitely in your best interest. Then you have a situation where they want you to discuss better sales terms, not necessarily better sales price, but better sales terms. They want certain terms that are more favorable for them. Okay, and that's across the board. They also are looking for a list of service providers in the home sale process, which actually is a two-part thing. Number one, if you don't have a mortgage broker, a home inspector, and all the subcategories of what a home inspector might bring, whether it be an electrician, a contractor, a handyman, a clean out person, a termite person, a roofer, a mason, whatever the case may be, it is in your best interest to know these people and to start engaging with them, because they all live somewhere, number one, so they can always turn into clients of yours. But number two, by referring them business, you ingratiate yourself to them, and chances are they may refer business back to you. Now, we live in a world right now that's upside down. You have people that are turning down business rather than accepting it. But that doesn't mean that's always going to be the scenario. And what I can tell you is a lot of business people who ignore the finer points when business is very busy always are on the other side of it when things turn around. And believe me, everything is secular. It will turn around. So it's important that you understand, knowing these people where it might not benefit you or them right away. If these are people that are in it for the long run and you're in it for the long run, chances are building up a database of providers may actually be in your best interest. Buyers also want to shorten their home search. They don't want to go and see 10s and 20s of houses. They just want to see the right house. So the more you can engage with them, the more you can talk to them, the more you can zero in on their wants and needs and make them feel like they're really part of the equation, the better you can help them. Some want an expanded search area, some want to be talked about, other school districts, so on and so forth. But most buyers, when they come to you now, they pretty much know where they want to be, why they want to be there. If they have varying areas, let's say a buyer is looking in Nassau County, Suffolk County, and they're also looking in New Jersey. Okay? That could be a little bit harrowing, right? Because that's a large quantity of works for you to do. So what you have to do is you have to be able to narrow it down. I know you're looking in all these areas, but if you had a preference on where you wanted to live, which area would it be? Always try to narrow it down. It's going to take you less time if you do. And that's the important part here. It's not shortening their time as much as it's also shortening your time. But what I found very, very interesting about this, and this comes from the NAR that I'm reading, is that price was way down on the list on what buyers are looking for most. What buyers are really looking for is they're looking to get into a house. Because interest rates are so low right now, buyers really have a better concept of what they're getting into than real estate agents do. So you have to understand, if a buyer is financing a home, they're not paying the price for the home that they're offering. They're always paying more. And because interest rates are so low right now, what they're really doing is they're buying an attractive monthly rate. I was talking to somebody the other day and they asked me, do you think I should refinance? They have 26 years left on their mortgage and their mortgage is at 5.2%. So I told them, not only do I think you should refinance, I don't think you should refinance for money. I think you should refinance for years. Because if they got a 15-year loan, they'd probably pay what they're paying now, but they would knock off a considerable amount of time from their mortgage. Because right now, a 15-year mortgage is about 2%. And that's very, very low. So that's a very attractive thing. So That's where buyers are at. That's why it's so important that when you show a buyer a home, and you can do this by using other programs. I like Carl's Mortgage Calculator. That's Carl with a K, that you can download to your phone. What that'll do is that will allow them to know the monthly payment before they walk through the door. You can send them a summary of what the house or what any of the homes that you're showing them will cost them on a monthly basis before they walk through the door of the home. So aside from telling them about agency, you can also.
I'm sorry, sir. What is it? What is the name of the app again,
Carl's,
please, sir?
Karls Mortgage Calculator. It's on iPhone and it's also on Android, so you shouldn't have any problem finding it. Okay, but it's Carl with a K.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and it's very simple to learn how to work. If you have any problem with it, just let me know, and I'll be more than happy to take you through it. That's not a big deal. So by showing them exactly how much they're going to spend monthly before they come in, that's more of a value that you're presenting to about yourself. Also, too, as I told you before, people who ignore the fundamentals when things are busy are going to be lost when things change around. The most prevalent of that is the real estate agent. Real estate agents right now are not taking good care of their buyers. As a matter of fact, a lot of buyers are being neglected or passed by because real estate agents are overwhelmed. There's too many buyers. Simply put, that's just the case. So what you want to do is you want to be able to employ systems that if you're not going to be able to engage with them, you're not going to alienate them, and you're certainly not going to make them bitter towards you. Because some buyers will take it personally if you do not get in touch with them or you do not keep a regular train of communication, if that's what you promised them at some point, and then you kind of let them go. See, buyers feel like they can do anything they want to a real estate agent. They can call us, they can ghost us, they can just disappear. We had 3 situations where we had accepted offers on houses. Agents tried to get back in touch with the buyer. These are people that they came twice, they liked it, they put in an offer, they gave into their financials, and then all of a sudden they just disappeared. No one could find them. So it becomes really necessary that not only when you talk to a buyer do you get one means of communication, you want to try to get as many means of communication with them as possible, meaning an email address, a telephone number, maybe a secondary telephone number. These are all different ways that you can get in touch with them in case you need to. What if you get something that's perfect for them and you want them to see it right away, but you only have one means of communicating with them, and that doesn't seem to be the best? Also, if it's a husband and wife looking for it, make sure you have the husband's information and the wife's information. Or any type of couple. The more means of communication you have, the better chances you have of being able to communicate with them quickly. So that's something that, this is all about tips and tricks. Sometimes we stop at the one. Gary Keller says you always want to go 3 deep. So what you want to do here is you want to get as much information as you can to help you and help them, because it's always reciprocal. If you're doing a good job for your client, chances are your client is going to do right by you. And that's just the way it works. Okay, so that's really where it is with buyers for now. We can go into detail a little bit more, but those are really the main things. Give buyers what they want. Most people want to know about the process, but that wanes a little as the people get older. As the people get older, they kind of want what they want. And you have to understand that. If they're a second-time home buyer, things like repairing the kitchen, repairing the bathroom, doing some work around the house, that's not going to bother them, because they pretty much know that when they go into a home, they're going to have a certain amount of work that needs to be done, and they recognize it and accept it. Whereas the first-time home buyer, they have almost a romantic notion of what a home should be. And what that notion doesn't include is work. Right? I'm buying this house, I'm putting all this money into it, I'm putting all my savings into it, I'm encumbering monthly payment. And now when I go in, oh my God, I need a water heater, the roof is leaking, the kitchen isn't exactly to my desire, the bathroom is older than what I thought it was, it needs to be painted, the outside needs to be taken care of. All these things. And homes are like having a part-time job. They always need maintenance. And if you don't maintain the home, eventually it's going to turn into something really, really big. So buyers have to be made aware of that. As an agent, you can guide them through that, right? You can develop systems where you give the buyer what to expect at every turn of the transaction and thereafter. And by doing that, you keep a constant relationship with them. You could tell them what to do to winterize a house. You can tell them what to do when spring comes around. You could tell them what to do when summer rolls around. When is the best time to paint? All those things, if you help buyers with, then they're going to be more likely remembering you. I see so many agents struggling. Oh, I want to do a mailing, but I don't have content, or I don't know what to give to a buyer or a seller. The best thing you can give to a buyer or a seller is pertinent information that they can use that would possibly save them money or give them some type of value. So next thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about sellers, because sellers are a little bit different than they used to be. And the reason why is because they don't feel they need us as much, because they think the market is very robust, the market is very vibrant. So if the market is very robust and the market is very vibrant and there's a lot of buyers out there, then you have sellers that are saying, why am I using a real estate agent? Why can't I do this by myself? Or why can't I get some type of hybrid situation where I don't have to pay as much? Because that's another thing that real estate agents are starting to see right now. You're starting to see commission compression, where you have these offices that are not brick and mortar offices that are offering less fees in order to do what they claim is the same job that you do. But what most people don't remember, and I want to ask somebody on this. Hey, Wesley.
Yep.
Quick question for you. What's easier to do? Find a buyer for a home or get a home to close?
What's easier to do? Find a buyer.
Okay. When does all the work really start?
Once you find a buyer.
Once you find the buyer. 25% of what a listing agent does is get a buyer. Now, not necessarily them, they can also enlist MLS to do it. The other 75% is getting the home to close. That is the art. The art is being able to handle every pitfall, every hurdle that comes by during the sale. When you can master that, then that is a true value proposition. And you just have to be able to get that across. Most sellers think you just get the price, right? I get the price, I'm all good. No, nothing can be further than the truth. So I read something very, very interesting a couple of days ago. And this was actually done by an independent study. And what they did was they interviewed 15,000 sellers. And they asked them all basically the same question. And number one need was find a buyer for their home. What do you think the number two need was?
Get a pre-qualification from the bank in order to
Find a pre-qualified buyer, so find somebody who's ready, willing, and able. That's pretty much our fiduciary responsibility but I get that. What do you think the number 2 want was from a seller?
Avoiding paying commissions. I don't. Yeah.
Actually, they don't care about paying a commission as long as they get what they want. Commission was way down on the list, believe it or not.
So selling the house in the price that they set in their mind?
That was number 4.
Okay.
What do you think was number 2?
Time.
That's it. Number 2 was time. More than price, more than terms. Selling the house in a time frame that was suitable to them was one of the most important things that they were looking for. Okay? So now you think some people thought it was commission, some people thought it was price, but what it actually is time. Because what does time give you that all those other ones don't? It gives you peace of mind. If you know that you're going to be able to act and react in the time frame that you need to do that, that gives you peace of mind. The worst thing is fear of the unknown. That's what you have to be able to really understand. So a majority of sellers that were surveyed here, and it's a pretty good sample, this is 15,000 people, right? Said time was the most important factor after finding a buyer. They wanted to find the time frame. Now, finding a buyer means that they want somebody that's really ready, willing, and able. That falls on the owner, on the agent rather, right? You want as an agent, as a seller, you want your agent to be able to bring somebody to you that's ready, willing, and able to purchase, right? So ready means they have the money on hand. Willing means they're willing to commit it. And able means that they can go to closing without selling or without any other contingencies. Their money is liquid to them. They are ready to go. Ready, willing, and able, right? Number 2, number 3 was price their home competitively, right? Not necessarily get the price for their home, but price their home competitively. They want to make sure that their home isn't underpriced in the market that they're in. And this can be very, very tricky in this market because you can actually run into a situation where the anticipated value from the seller doesn't have any merit because it's not backed up by data. I had a situation recently where I had a seller telling me that they knew this house sold for this price and this house sold for this price, and literally they did not. So sometimes the misinformation can build up and you have to kind of combat that. And the best way to combat it is not saying, oh, I have this and I have that. You refer to third-party data. You tell them where you're getting it from, and this is the same way a lender is going to do it. Not you're putting together the data, you're getting the data from a third-party reliable source. And all you're doing is explaining to them, this is what you see, and this is probably how it's going to be interpreted. In many cases, when you're dealing with a seller, you're going to hear the seller say, I want this in terms of price, or I need to get this. Does any of that really matter when it comes to the sale of their home? If they want something or if they need something, does that really matter?
It could, especially the need part.
Well, yeah, but does that mean you're going to be able to provide it?
Well, that's where it could actually matter. If they need certain amount and it's unreasonable, that we might not be able to help them.
Right, but it doesn't mean we can't help them in another fashion. In other words, we can bring out to them that the market isn't going to meet their expectations. We can give it a try, but it's probably not going to happen because they are X amount of percentage overvalued. What you don't want to do is you don't want to mislead them. And you don't want to say something like, okay, fine, we'll get you what you're looking for, if you know it's impossible to do. Now, I know the word possible in this market when it comes to something selling is very difficult. I know it is, because constantly glass ceilings are being broken and barriers that were up are not there anymore. Buyers are dropping contingencies. They're dropping terms of which they're buying for because they just want to get into a house. Mortgage rates are so low, houses are so few and in between that you're running into a situation where it's almost anything goes, but it's never anything goes when it comes to financing, because there's always someone that has the final word. And the person that has the final word is the lender. If you have someone buying cash, that's a different story. But it's the lender that has the final say. Sellers also want you to help them show their house the best you can show it. Having a professional photographer on speed dial, always preferred. Now your photographer can't just be a photographer, they also have to be a videographer, because they have to be able to either take a walkthrough video or do a Matterport tour, which is a 3D tour that allows the buyer to actually walk around in the house, so to speak, because they can pick the direction that they go. These aren't just pictures that pan in and pan out. This is actually being inside the home. So you have to understand that when you're looking for providers, one of the providers that you want to look for is you want to look for a skilled photographer. Also, too, if you're dealing with luxury properties, you may want to find somebody who can operate a drone. Because if you're dealing with a luxury property that has a large lot, or maybe it's on the water, and you want to show all the benefits that that brings, you may have to do it from an aerial view. So that's something else that you want to think of. Also, staging a property properly. You can stage it realistically, or you can stage it virtually. Is that something that's going to help the sale of the house? Right now, you would say, well, those things, Marco, maybe you don't need them, because things can sell with one picture and nobody really cares about the staging because all they want is the house. This is true, but it doesn't mean that that's the case for everything. And it also doesn't mean that it wouldn't enhance the sale of it if you had it done. Every market is not reacting the same way. Some markets are slower than others. And we're starting to see that more and more. The Queens market, for example, is not as brisk as some parts of the Long Island market. The Brooklyn market, although it's picking up, is lagging. The Staten Island market is lagging big time. But the Bronx market is on fire. Houses are selling in the Bronx like that. So you need to know what's going on. As a skilled agent, you need to know what areas are working. Maybe you want to start looking in one area rather than the other. Also, too, you're going to start hearing a lot more of agents without borders, meaning that it's not going to be unusual for you to refer someone down to different states in order for them to buy, and you're going to be able to capitalize on that either through a referral rate or something better. Because there is something definitely being talked about where agents are going to have a lot more flexibility on where they work. So, and you'll do this through other agents, but it's going to be different than a referral process. This is what we're starting to see more and more of. It's going to be much more open. Whereas you're an agent who has a New York license, but you might be making some of your money in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Okay? But you'll see as things come along, people will start talking about it and you'll start hearing it. Help with paperwork and inspections. If a seller doesn't know what to expect in a home inspection, they might be totally taken back by it because the home inspector may say something negative about the home. And the seller may think that they're trying to influence the transaction when in fact they're just doing their job. And not all things that are said negative during a home inspection are deal killers. They're just information. So, Janelle, let me ask you a question.
Yep, I'm here, Marco.
Okay, let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
You sell a house for $10,000 less than asking price. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the buyer tells you the reason why they're offering X is because the house needs a certain amount of work. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You have an inspection.
Mm-hmm.
The home inspector says the house needs a certain amount of work, and the buyer wants to renegotiate the price. How would you handle that?
Well, if you didn't use what the home inspector mentioned as leverage already to reduce the price, because you said the buyer already offered 10,000 less than asking,
Right.
then you may want to factor that in to, you might want to factor in the new information into the negotiation.
Well, let's look at it from both sides, right? Let's look at it from the buyer's side. The home inspector is telling the buyer that the house needs a certain amount of work. The buyer has recognized that the house needs a certain amount of work by offering less, and the seller has recognized that their house does need work by offering less, by accepting less. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now the buyer wants to negotiate again on the same premise. Now, you differentiated and you said, if it's not the same thing that they negotiated the first time, this is why they're negotiating the second time, which means that you might want to be a little bit more specific. So I like that. So let's go a little bit deeper on this, right?
Right.
You have a kitchen that's older, but it's functional. The buyer says, I have to put a new kitchen in the house. What do you say to the buyer when they say something like that? The kitchen is functional. It's just not pretty. And the buyer says, I have to put in a new kitchen. If you worked for the seller, what would you say?
I would say that's not, although you understand, because you would, of course, sympathize or address their concerns. So you would acknowledge that, but mention to them that that's not enough leverage to actually reduce the price of the home after it has already been reduced, because it is a functional kitchen.
Absolutely. And not only that, what you would say to them is this, and acknowledging it is definitely the first thing you want to do on any objection. Okay? And it also shows the buyer that you're listening. But what I would say is this, the reason, because this is me representing the seller, not me representing the buyer. Me representing the buyer, a whole different train of thought. But representing the seller, I would say the entire reason why the house is priced this way is because of the work that's needed. So that's already been factored in. If it did have a new kitchen, the house would be asking more money. But because of where we are right now, the house reflects the value of what they're asking. We've already factored that in. Now, did we, didn't we? I mean, listen, one man's drink is another man's poison. Not everybody's going to change the kitchen. Some people just want it to work. Other people want it to be beautiful. Some people want a $30,000 kitchen. Some people want a $100,000 kitchen. Everybody wants something different. So when you're going to sell a house, as long as it's presentable and as long as it's functional, you're not going to fix something that's not broken. You're not going to get your value back on it. But you can price it accordingly. Again, in a market that's a little bit more sensible, you would see that. In this type of market, I don't think the buyer would have a leg to stand on. I don't think the buyer would be able to negotiate anything. because the next buyer would just say, okay, forget it.
Correct. Mhm.
You know what I mean? But that doesn't work in every market. There are actual negotiations that go on in home sales. Unfortunately, we're losing that battle in being able to move forward with stuff like that because there's just not that many negotiations anymore. It's what are they starting at? Well, the asking price is really the starting price. In many areas, that's the way it is. In many areas, that's the way it is, but you have to know how to handle it. So now let's go back to the engineer's inspection, right? So the engineer's inspection, the buyer wants to renegotiate. If you represent the seller, you tell them, hey, listen, good news. We don't have to renegotiate the house. The seller's willing to fix the problem, but they're going to ask $20,000 more. Think the buyer might rethink it then?
Sure.
So let me ask you, Marco, it can be the other way around, like the owner of the house agreed to give money back to the buyer just to fix them themselves, like an incentive?
Depending upon the market, yes. Also, too, I'm very hesitant on letting homeowners fix something when they want to sell it. I'd rather them give the credit to the buyer because it always turns into something more. You open up a wall in a house, you start an electrical job or whatever, a plumbing job. It's never the one pipe. It's always something else, right? It's kind of like if you ever read that book to your kids when they were younger, give a mouse a cookie, right? It's always give a mouse a cookie, then he's going to want something to drink. And if he wants something to drink, he's going to want to have a place to sit. If he has a place to sit, he's going to want to do that in your home, so on and so forth. That's what happens when you start working on an older home or a house of any age. It's never just one thing. It's always a series of things. So rather than have the seller get involved in all that, just have them give a little bit of money and walk away. And most sellers and most sellers' attorneys are agreeable to that. They don't want their client doing work for the reasons I mentioned. So the next thing is they want you to be able to negotiate the best deal with their buyer, but prioritize their needs. So they kind of want everything to go in their direction, which is a little hard if you're the person representing the buyer, because the buyer has to feel like some things are going in their direction, or they don't think anything is equitable, or you're not going to get that win-win, or the buyer is going to reject it. But right now, buyers are swallowing a lot. Buyers know in order to get a house, they basically have to do pretty much what the seller tells them to do. As far as time frame, as far as offered price, accepted price, as far as terms, and anything else. Buyers don't have a lot of leverage right now to negotiate. So those are the major things that sellers are looking for. And the funny thing is that price is just assumed. You're going to get them the price. They just want everything else. Also, what you're seeing a lot too is on personal property, when it comes to appliances, everything is as is. And that's something we discussed in the other class not too long ago. The general assumption of the word as is, right? So Wesley, if I'm telling you I'm selling my house in as is condition, what do you assume?
I assume that no matter what comes back with the inspection report, we're not flexible on the price. The price is to reflect the condition of the property.
Okay, so no matter what, is that correct?
No matter what.
What if it comes back that there is a severe structural problem with the home?
If there's a severe structural problem with the home, then that impacts the current buyer and any future buyer. So it comes down to what the seller wants to do.
That's right. That's absolutely right. So when you have a problem that everyone is going to object to, then you have some leverage to try to move the seller off their position. It's not a few buyers are going to have a problem with. A majority of buyers are going to have a problem. Now, some may look at it a little different because they may have different sources that are available to them that could help them out of a situation. To put it in New York terms, they know a guy, right? So some people, if they hear it has severe termite damage that's affecting the major support beam of the home, they may run away. They may think that's crucial. Other people may say, no problem, we'll just put another beam next to it, we'll sister it, we'll joist it here, we'll joist it there, and everything will be fine. I do want a little bit money off because we're going to have to encumber that, but it's not a deal killer to me. Different buyers have different perceptions, but if you have something that's universal, that you can move the buyer off their, the seller rather, off of their position, you might have a chance of negotiation with that. Something like that, you might have a chance of negotiation. But as is, in a lot of situations, is not totally as is. I've seen as is with typical guarantees on the plumbing, the roof, the heating, and the electric. And just getting back to electric, that's something you should know. If you're talking to a mortgage broker, you should ask them, at what point is their lender or lenders going to push back if there's not an adequate electrical system in the property? In other words, I think adequate in New York State is considered, in New York City rather, is considered 60 amps, which is inadequate, but that's considered adequate. 100 amps is the norm. Anything over 100 amp service is considered above average. But really what it should go to is it should go to the square footage of the house, but banks don't look at things like that. They look at things that are black and white. Not all lenders do, but most do. And that might be somewhat of an impediment to someone selling their home. Pointing out things that may cause them difficulty in selling their home, you're doing two things. You're doing the best by them, but you're also putting up a red flag, because the same way there are buyers that won't object to certain things, there are real estate agents that won't bring out anything bad in a home because they don't want the sellers not to like them. Because it's always great to tell the truth, but sometimes telling people the truth pisses them off. They don't always want to hear the truth. Nobody wants to hear that they have an open permit and it may cause them a problem selling. Nobody wants to hear that their house isn't in compliance to what should be there. Some people are okay with it, but most people aren't. So you really have to learn how to have that conversation gracefully. And it took me a long time to learn how to do that, because I really believe that if I'm going to represent the seller, I have to tell them what they need to know, even though they don't know they need to know it, because it's going to come up and bite us later on. And usually that's going to happen right before closing.
Marco?
Yes.
I'm sorry, before you go any further, can you just piggyback on the statement you made regarding the lender pushback for electrical?
Sure. There
Yeah.
are certain guidelines that lenders have to have in order for them to give a mortgage. They want the heating to be working. They want the kitchen to be functional. They want to have working plumbing and a working bathroom in a home. Aside from that, they also want to have an adequate electrical service coming into the home. Now, where this all goes by the wayside is sometimes with FHA, if you're doing like an FHA 203K loan,
Mhm.
where they're actually going to fund the repairs, you may be able to get away with stuff like that. But if this is a conventional mortgage, they may give you a hard time. And also VA loans, they're strict on certain things, but they turn their head on a lot of stuff that conventional loans might have a problem with. Also, there's certain lenders that have no problem with something that's not in compliance as long as it's not violated, as long as they don't have a violation on the property. It's kind of like don't ask, don't tell. Right? You have one of those scenarios. Now, I'm not the lender. It doesn't bother me. What'll happen is if you have a situation that is a title situation, if you will, that might be hard for a lender to bypass. You may have certain lenders that have a problem with a bath in the basement, but if there's no violation on it, they may just turn their head and not take, or the appraiser may not take a picture of it. That's why it's so important to know the people that you're working with so you can have the conversation ahead of time. But as far as the electrical goes, 60 amp is considered the absolute minimum. But some banks now, some lenders now want 100 amp service. All you need to do is just go to Google and ask what they both look like. The easiest way to tell the amperage on a service is normally the main fuse or the main circuit breaker in the box will say 100 amp or 60 amp. 60 amp is usually indicated because you'll see, if you see a system with fuses, for example, chances are it's not 100 amp service. Right?
Thank you.
It's probably less. Also, in older houses, you might see something that's inadequate. That's not unusual. I've seen a lot of houses in Brooklyn, for example, that have inadequate electrical panels.
Marco, now that we're talking about electrical plumbing, etc. system, and if the house has an issue with the water coming out of the drain of the shower, the basement fluid, etc., that's definitely a septic tank that wasn't being empty or treated, or
Did you have somebody come in and inspect the septic system? This is a place where there is a septic tank, is that correct?
I guess so, because I can understand how the dark water can come out of the shower drain. So
where is this located?
this is my home. This is what I rent right now, and actually every time that it rains, the basement fluid, etc. So
Where are you, Elizabeth?
Richmond Hills.
Oh, no. There's no septic tank. Probably what happened was, this happens in the basement?
Yes, a lot. Since we
Okay.
moved.
Probably what happened was when they finished the basement, they could put certain valves on the plumbing that will not allow water to back up. Okay, chances are they didn't do that. So for whatever reason, basements aren't meant to have apartments down there. They're not meant to be finished. Basements were meant to be basements. They were meant to be storage and everything else. People just started finishing them off because it was part of the house. But if you don't do it correctly and you don't take proper precautions, you're going to get a situation like that.
Well, we have a lot of situations since we moved here. So in the renter size, what will be your right in terms of having that kind of issues? I mean, over and over and over, and they
In a perfect world, you'd move.
Yes, and this is what
Okay, but I would have the conversation. I would have the conversation with the landlord, and I would say to them, "Listen, I don't want to go and report that this is a problem, a health problem, or whatever the case may be, because it's only going to bring more problems to you if an inspector has to come down here. So I want this, this, and this, and I'm going to go."
Got it. Okay.
That might be the best way to approach it. But I wouldn't report it right away because it's going to cause a myriad of problems for them.
Okay.
You know, because if a health inspector comes down there and they violate it that way, then the building department's going to come down. He's going to get a violation on it. He's going to be asked to remove it. It's no joke.
Really?
Right.
And they are that effective, like, so the complaint, if he doesn't cooperate, will be health department and then Department of Building?
Well, you got groundwater coming up. It's the Department of Health. And then after that, it's going to be the Department of Buildings. It may actually work the other way around. The building department may come, then they will send the EPA, and then the EPA will send the Department of Health.
Sorry, what is the EPA?
The EPA may come after the building department. Because they
Okay.
want to make sure the Environmental Protection Agency, they want to make sure that everything is done correctly.
But what the EPA stand for?
Environmental Protection Agency.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, because there's all kinds of things. If a basement's getting wet, that means there's mildew. And if there's mildew, there could be mold. And if there's mold, it could be certain kinds of mold that are hazardous to people's health.
Yeah, no, that too. We noticed also that the basement have mold in some of the walls. I mean, they painted, I mean, and it was brand new, beautiful when we moved. But now, you know, all the true colors are coming out.
Yeah, Elizabeth, I am going to tell you right now, if you're living in a situation where there's constant water coming in, leave.
No, and that's the plan. That's the plan. And one was my concern to bring to your attention. I mean, I'm moving and looking in different places where to buy. You know, I told you that I'm looking to buy a property. And yes, based in what the mortgage loaner told me I am qualified for, obviously there is not too much around here.
Okay.
So I was looking foreclosure. I was looking in Suffolk County, you know, looking everywhere.
Sure. No, I get it. Like I said, though, if you're living in a place with constant water coming in, you want to address that because it's not healthy for you or your family members.
Yes, of course. I just want to make sure what were my legal rights, you know, me before proceeding.
I
Because
can't tell you your legal rights because I'm not an attorney. I can only give you my experience as a real estate agent.
No, obviously, as a renter, you know, what is my, you know, I mean, I read the book. I mean, I know that there are, if the place is not livable, it's no, I mean.
It's not inhabitable.
Yes.
Right, you can't inhabit it. Yeah, I get it. Anyway, so that's where the sellers are coming from. That's where the buyers are coming from. I just want to touch upon where tenants are coming from, right? You got a prospective tenant. And I want to talk to somebody who's done rentals a little bit. So, Wes, I'm going to turn to you again.
Yes, sir.
How do you find your tenants, Wesley? How are they in demand-wise? I know it's hard to classify everybody into one thing, but if you would say overall, when someone comes looking for an apartment, what distinguishes a good tenant from a bad tenant? What position are most tenants in?
Well, for the last almost 2 years, I mean, ever since COVID started, everything's changed.
Okay.
So you have tenants that make excellent income, but their credit is completely shut. I mean, we're talking 450. Why is it shut? Well, according to their stories, they decided to not pay their credit cards, their bills, only to pay the rent. And then you call the landlord only to find out that they haven't paid rent in 13 months. So you have this type of tenant that is very popular right now.
Really? So you have people that haven't paid any of their bills, blame it basically on, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's extremely common, and it's making things very, very, very difficult.
Okay, so is that why it's important to run the NTN right away?
The NTN is phenomenal to use as soon as possible. And also what I use all the time now is I need to know where they're moving from. I look up the public record of the property, find who the owner is, and I ask for the owner's phone number. When I talk to the owner, I actually go over the details of the property to ensure they are the owner. And a lot of them get very upset with me for doing that. But you know, it's if you're representing the landlord and you have a prospect tenant, this is something that I found I have to do. A lot of tenants are lying right now, unfortunately.
Okay.
And there are good tenants, very qualified, they're still there, but they're just maybe 1 out of 100, give or take.
Okay, so you're taking it one step further, and you personally are contacting the current landlord.
Yeah, the current landlord and their job.
Okay. Can I just play devil's advocate for a minute?
Sure.
Okay. So I have John Doe living in my house who's not paying me any rent, and you call up and you ask me for a recommendation on what kind of tenant he is. Now, I know you're calling me because John Doe is looking to leave my apartment, which makes me very happy, by the way, because that's a tenant who's not paying rent, right?
That's right.
Why in the world would I say anything negative to you about that?
You're absolutely right on that. And it happens all the time. It happens all the time. And it's difficult to get to the bottom of it, but I did have, thankfully, I guess, I did have a lot of landlords that were very straightforward with me. They told me very descriptive things about their current tenant, and they did not suggest that we rent to them. They were in the process of getting them kicked out one way or another, and that was it. Sometimes you don't get nothing.
They said, let me bear the burden.
Oh yeah, some of these guys, 15 minutes of just non-stop railing. I mean, railing.
Wow.
So
But when you think about that, that's so counterintuitive. It's like, I can take this burden off your hands. All you have to do is lie to me and say, yeah, they're a perfect tenant. They pay their rent all the time. And you say, no. I don't want to do that. Let them stay with me and put me in agony. And I'm going to save you that problem.
You're absolutely right on that.
I
was fortunate so far.
That's incredible. But that was the biggest reason why back in the day, we never called current landlords, because we always felt that we wouldn't get an accurate description of what the tenant is like. We always looked at work history, and we looked at the landlord before the landlord.
Yeah.
They'll tell us the truth.
I agree with that.
As far as the other, listen, there's really no way. Here's the thing. The perfect tenant can move into your home and turn into the most unperfect tenant overnight. And it could be situational. They don't want to, but they lost their job. There was some type of loss, whether it be monetary, whether it be physical, whether it be medical. Something came up and interrupted, upset the apple cart, if you will. And now this person is under your roof. And let's face it, I was reading an article in the New York Times the other day, and they were talking about how now the eviction law, or the no eviction law, is supposed to be repealed at the end of July. Everybody's still flipping the coin and saying it's going to last till August, the end of August. But they were saying how there's going to be massive evictions. There'll be some evictions. There's not going to be massive evictions, because in order for them to start the eviction process or finish the eviction process, that is a procedure. That's a court procedure. So depending upon, and they're backed up from March of 2020. Now, from anybody's experience, do courts move quickly?
No.
Okay, so if courts don't move quickly and they're backed up over a year and a half now, might it take some time to get to the eviction proceeding of the person that stopped paying their rent and now you just went on the clock?
Yes.
Because there's a lot of people that have not, and this is something that we talked about a few months ago, how important it was, even though you were spinning your wheels at the time, to just get your name in front of the court and get it started, get the holdover proceeding started. So you wouldn't start from July or August, you'd be starting from February or March. That's where you would be in the sequencing of things.
Marco.
Yes.
It's Janelle.
Yeah,
I have a question. So Wesley mentioned contacting the homeowner for a prospective tenant. Can you take another approach, which would be to search the landlord-tenant database? Because like you said, that can be very subjective.
We're not allowed to do that anymore.
Oh, really?
Wes,
Yeah,
According-
I'm sorry.
according
Thank
to
you
who?
for, thank you
No.
for sharing that.
Marco, when the new laws and regulations came out prior to COVID about the extra securities and the
Right.
$20 fee, so on and so forth,
2019, yeah.
part of it was the ban for us agents to run the blacklist. However, there is one way around it, and it's actually simple. As long as the landlord is the one that pays for the additional fee to run the background on the landlord's tenant courts, and the tenant agrees, then it's fine. We just cannot be the ones doing it and charging extra. It needs to be full disclosure with the landlord paying for it.
Okay. All right. So basically what you're saying is this. We can't do it on our own accord, but if the landlord wants to do it, or he wants to put up the money or asks us to do it, then we're allowed to do it as long as it's coming from him. or her.
And the tenant is aware of it.
Of
Says
course.
yes or whatever.
So there has to be full disclosure and transparency on both sides.
That is correct.
Right. And-
So,
But
So
here's the
just-
thing. Let me just interrupt 1 second before you finish your thought. Here's
sure.
the thing. If the tenant says no, he said yes.
Exactly. There's your answer. If the tenant has any problems with that, okay, go find another unit.
Right. The quickest thing is if they object to something like that, you know the reason why they're objecting. If they have nothing to hide, why would they object?
Exactly.
Right. So you could do it without even doing it.
So I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. Now, Wesley, are you talking, so there's usually a computer located in landlord-tenant court. I know for Brooklyn, there's a computer all the way on the back of the second floor where you can actually enter a tenant's first name, last name, and some other pertinent information, and it populates all the non-payment cases linked to that tenant, linked to that individual rather. So is that what you're saying you need the landlord's permission for? Or-
No, we have access, our office has access to a service, the National Tenant Network Screening,
Mhm.
which is $20 per adult per tenant applicant, which runs the credit. It runs their wherever they live,
Background.
their
Mhm.
it gives you all the addresses, and it also shows you if they have any, if they're under their watch list or sexual offender list. It used to provide also the landlord tenant court records, if there were any. It
Okay.
stopped after 2019 because of
Oh.
the new regulations. I mean, what you're talking about, when it comes down to landlords themselves, if they want to take it upon them, it's different. When it comes down to us as realtors, we have certain guidelines to follow thanks to the Department of State. And that's one of them.
Got it. Thank you.
Well, we also have to follow, you have to understand, we also have certain guidelines through fair housing and through the code of ethics and through a number of other things that control our license, another number of mechanisms that control our license through the DOS that prohibit us from overstepping. Because we only act in a fiduciary manner. And the moment you understand that, the moment you'll know that if a landlord is asking for something out of the ordinary and it's not something that we can provide and the tenant is not willing to do it, we can't overstep and do it. But we can certainly explain to the landlord when we speak to them that this is the situation. Because some landlords just think, you're going to get everything for me. Also, too, you need complete disclosure and transparency if you're going to hand someone's credit report. That is a federal crime, and it's against the National Credit Reporting Act. So if you just turn over someone's credit report to someone, not only are you exposing that person to the possibility of having their identity stolen, you're also breaking some major laws without them giving you permission.
Can
And,
you at least show it to them?
Not without their permission.
Okay.
Not without their permission.
Can I just add something to that?
Sure.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with everything you said. That's also why, personally speaking, the National Tenant Network screening that we use, we are able to send out a link via email to any prospect tenant where they get all the disclosures and so on and so forth, and they fill it out on their own from the comfort of their home. However, personally, I prefer them fill out the physical copy that we have at the office, which all the way on the bottom, they need to sign. And when they're signing it, they're signing off on the said disclaimer that we are being allowed by them to disclose all of this information to any prospect landlords and agents affiliated with the said landlords. And the office keeps this application for, I think, what is it, Marco, 5-7 years? We keep it in the office before we shred it.
Yes.
Right. So if anything ever happens and anybody wants to come after us because their identity was stolen and they figured it had to be through us, we have that disclosure at hand.
Here's the caveat to that, Wesley, and here's the only problem that you have, is that it should say redacted report. Without the word redacted in it, like if you give your tax returns to someone, they have to be redacted. If they're not, and the person who asked you for them is a professional like yourself, and did not ask for a redacted copy, you're putting yourself in harm's way because you're allowing that person now to have their identity stolen. Even though their social security number is on the application, you need a redacted form in order to move forward. And there's also, there are certain things where you're within your rights to ask for, a landlord can ask for anything. And if a tenant is okay with it, then fine. But there are certain rights that tenants have on not giving all the information because it could be used against them. And now you have a prejudicial or a bias situation. So listen, I know it's not going to come up all the time. And I know most people just want to get into the apartment. I get it. But we do things sometimes, especially if you guys ever sell co-ops, because the listing agent is going to ask for a plethora of information, and rightfully so, because they're going to have to, your client is going to have to go through a board, right? So they're going to ask you some information to make sure they're board ready. The problem is that you can overstep very easily by doing that. I've had agents ask me to send them 2 years of tax returns for the client, and I tell them, I'll send you the first page and the signed page, but I'm not giving you the entire tax return, and it's going to be redacted. Whatever the board needs, we'll give them, but I'm not going to give that to you because you just don't know. So you have to be a little bit careful. I get what you're saying, and in most cases, it's fine. Things don't go wrong until they go wrong, and then when they go wrong in real estate, they go wrong. They go very quickly. So you just got to make sure you're trying to do everything the best way you can. And if you ever have any questions about this, talk to an attorney. Again, it's a provider. Knowing people to be able to ask questions, to be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, listen, I got this situation here. What should I do? You would be surprised.
So Marco, when you're co-broken on an apartment, how would you handle that situation, being that the other agent from another office has the client, or the prospective tenant? And in terms of like vetting that tenant, how would you handle that situation?
Well, we never see the NTN unless they give us permission to. They get the NTN and then it goes over to whoever they want it to. Isn't that the way it works, Wes?
I'm sorry, I don't actually understand the question.
In other words, when we give the tenant the link, for example, for the NTN,
yes,
they put in all their information. We don't see it. They give us permission to see it via the NTN. Isn't that correct?
If they do it online, that's how it works. If they do it in person, then we take the application, bring over to the front desk, and we have all the information in front of us.
Right, exactly. Exactly. But most of the time, let's say if it's done online, they don't necessarily have to share that with us. They can get it, look at it, and decide what they want to do with it next.
No, this is an agent who's contacting, let's say, one of the KWLR agents in reference to like an exclusive listing. They represent the tenant, and of course, we represent the landlord. And so we're they call and they ask, are you co-broken on this listing?
Okay.
And so in terms, they don't have access to they may not have access to the NTN from whatever office they're working from.
Got it. Okay, so generally speaking, when it comes down to credit screening, we're obligated to take any, how do you say it in English? Any sufficient, I think is the word, Marco, something that is running all of the bureaus, a software that runs all of the bureaus.
No, absolutely. You want to run all 3 credit reports.
We are obligated to take any credit report from any agency as long as it shows proper detailed credit report through all 3 agencies and is not older than 30 days.
Right.
We cannot ask if the prospect tenant from the cooperating agent ran credit through Mambo Jumbo Credit Report Company, whatever it is. It's not older than a month. We have to accept it. We cannot request that they run ours. We can't do that by, again, 2019 changes in regulations.
Yeah.
So let me ask you guys, it is okay for those people that have the CreditWise or Credit Journey, free services from the bank. Exactly, to show that, that you get those alerts every month, every week, how your credit score is. It is legal to use those, or, is sufficient for the landlord purposes?
Well, no, it all depends upon what the landlord is willing to accept or not. Okay, what Wesley is saying is we're looking for something that's going to take all 3 credit reporting bureaus into consideration. Okay, not some fly-by-night. And Credit Karma, even as a disclaimer on their sites, that what they're giving you is not necessarily a true projection or a truly accurate projection, and that you should get a credit report by one of the big 3 that include the other 2. So if you go to Experian, if you go to TransUnion, if you go to Equifax, you're fine. But you have to get all 3 reporting agencies because everybody reports differently.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, but a landlord may not necessarily want that. A landlord may say other things. You have to go, you can't take it upon yourself. If a landlord says, hey, I don't want any credit, I don't want any bank statements, I'm going to go on my gut. You can't turn around and say, well, this is the way we do business. You could say, I've advised you this way, just sign here that this is what you're saying. That's fine. But you can't take it upon yourself to say, oh, no, we have to do this. That is not your job. You could suggest it, but you can't do it without their permission. You always act with the understanding is that you're a fiduciary and that you're going to adhere to your client's wishes. Whether you object to them or not, you can give them the right advice. It's like if somebody says to you, I don't need an inspector on the home. It's not enough for you to say, okay, what you need to do is you need to put a form in front of them saying, I recommended you getting a home inspector. You decided not to. And this is just you telling me that that was the case. Then you're fine. If you do it the other way, they can always turn around in the court of law and say, well, you know what? Wesley told me not to get a home inspector. And I listened to him. Now I have mold and it's a big problem. I'm suing everybody.
Can I add something real quick? I'm sorry to take up the time.
Sure, absolutely.
When it comes down to rentals, yeah, just like with anybody, if the landlord says B and it is B, then it is B. But especially with rentals, because if you start doing them, if you're going to be listing apartments, you're going to be dealing with insane amount of phone calls, emails, messages, you name it. So when I go speak to any landlord, if they usually ask, if they don't ask, I just present them a full list of what I do together with my office to screen every prospect tenant. And it always has to be the same exact thing. Unless they object, then I'm going to do what I presented to them with everybody I speak to. And when I speak to tenants, I'm always following the same questions over and over and over again. If they want to have a conversation, that's fine, but you do not deviate from what you did with the past 300 people, because there are testers out there. You don't want to treat anybody different. And it sounds stupid simple, but it's not. Sometimes you just ask different things that you did not ask the past 15 people. It may be a problem. Always follow the same list of questions. I've spoken.
I would take it one step further. Okay. If you're gonna work with apartments, naturally you're gonna engage in conversation. Keep the conversation very general. Don't get specific. Say, I'm gonna send you a form. I need you to fill this out, get it back to me, and then we can set up some apartments for you. Very simple. Or we'll see what we have. And the reason why you want to do that is because that ensures that every client is being asked the exact same question. If you just leave one out, you open yourself up to biasness. And if you open up yourself to bias, you can open up yourself to being prejudicial. And if you're on prejudicial, they're going to look at you for fair housing. And if they look at you for fair housing, you have a very good chance of losing your license. So I would say, whether you're on the landlord end or you're on the tenant end, keep your conversations basic and have all the questions that you need answered, whatever they may be, on paper and consistent all the time. Never deviate. And the quickest way for you not to deviate is just have a form. This is the form for my landlord. This is the form for my tenant. Now, you may want to go over that a little bit and be very, very careful what your questions are. Wes, can we ask anybody if they have children?
Nope.
Can we ask anybody how old the people are going to be in the apartment?
Nope.
Can we talk about the number of occupants that are going to be in the apartment?
Yes.
Yes. Up to what degree?
Elaborate. What do you mean by that?
In other words, 3-room apartment, landlord's using it as an investment. How many people, according to HUD, can live in a 3-room?
In a 3-bedroom or 3-room?
3-room.
Okay, you can have 2 people per room, and each child is half a person.
That's right. So 1.5 persons per room or 2 adults per room. The kitchen does not count as a room.
Okay.
But the
Okay, hold on
bedroom,
a second.
and the living room does. So on a 3-room apartment, you could have 4 people. I see constantly advertisements from agents saying that they have a 1-bedroom apartment that's suitable for a single or a couple. They are in violation of fair housing. Now, are they going to get in trouble? Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but sooner or later they will. You can't even say walk to Subway because not everybody walks.
Or short. Don't forget short.
Yeah. You can't say houses of worship. You have to be very, very careful in the language that you're going to use. Now, just imagine if you have to be careful in the words that you're using when you're writing ads, imagine how careful you have to be in a questionnaire when you talk to a tenant or you talk to a landlord. So I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to, I'll even go as far as saying this with a buyer. Real estate salespeople and salespeople in general love to talk. What you really have to learn how to do is listen and ask consistent questions. Because all the rest could just get you in trouble. And that is the way every single real estate is going.
So Mark, I'm sorry, you say before that, or the other gentleman says that it's 1.5 to 2 people per room.
That's
And
correct.
then you say
And the
that
kitchen-
3-bedroom
and the kitchens
apartment.
and baths don't count as a room.
Okay, so for 3-bedroom apartment, only 4 people can live there?
No, in a three bedroom,
Mm-hmm.
you have 3 bedrooms, that's 6 people. You have a living room, that's 8 people. You have a dining room,
Yes.
that's 10. And
Oh.
children count as half, not 1.
Yeah.
So you can have 10 people in a 6-bedroom, in a 3-bedroom apartment.
Got it.
Okay, that's according to that's according to HUD. Okay, guys, I hope you found this a little bit helpful. It's a little bit escape from the norm, because what we're doing is we talked about everything that is going to come up in real life in your real estate business. I will tell you, preparedness in real estate is paramount, because the more prepared you are for the situation and the simpler you make it, the easier it's going to be. It's when we complicate things, when we try to overthink it, when we try to do too much, that's when problems start to come up. And this wasn't just about problems. This is also about solutions and about understanding a little bit more. Thanks very much for showing up on a Sunday. I really do appreciate it. Next Sunday is going to be the last Sunday class. If you guys like Sunday better than Saturday, it's something we can always talk about. Until then, I will see you on Tuesday. Any questions, feel free to text me and we'll talk then. Any
Marco, can I
questions?
stay with you for 5 minutes, please? I
Sure,
promise I'm gonna be short.
that's fine. Any questions before we go?
Nope.
No.
Thank you.
All right, guys, I'll wait till you sign off, and I'll speak to you, Elizabeth, as soon as we're done.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, why don't you